Hey, everyone, this is Mark Intrican, and we are here for the Achieving Unity podcast. It's our weekly podcast every Thursday about creating solutions one reality at a time. And what we can do is make the world a better place by achieving unity through power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others as we are building better relationships from prenuptial, our relationship agreements for clear understandings, also helping and coaching parents, resolving problems in marriage or maybe pre-marriage. We want to be achieving successful parenting for divorced couples or people that are separated and they have children that we want to make sure we take care of because the best parent is both parents and our children have rights also, even though we do want them to mind. We do want to make sure that they're raised in a good, happy home. It's about creating solutions based on the personal or professional realities and possible struggles in front of each of us. As you can see, there's my email. Contact me anytime. I would appreciate talking with you. This is the Achieving Unity Weekly podcast, and it is every Thursday. If it is not a U.S. holiday, which means on Thanksgiving Day it will only be a recorded version and will not be live, but it is 1 p.m. Pacific time, 4 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, each time zone around the world, actually. From reality focused dynamics to the success focused solution. And that's my company because we create those solutions for the best of both of us. So please contact us for more information on using Agile and Lean outside of software. We know all these technologies work in business, but they can also work on our personal life. The philosophy can be used in every discipline, every vertical, and even raising our children. Agile is the ability to create, respond to change, turning change into improvement, not just short term, but go long term, enabling success in an uncertain and turbulent environment by emphasizing the adaptability and collaboration. Collaboration and communication are the keys that open the doors to our success. Lean is the methodology focused on maximizing value by minimizing waste and optimizing our processes through continuous improvement, effectiveness, and efficiency. Connect with me and I'll show you how to break all products and services down from the most complex projects to the basic steps, as I said, of training even our children or teenagers. Let me show you how I can turn changing into improving, developing into delivery, and software into solutions. Wid, bid, rid, gid. Let's write it down, break it down, review its dependencies, and get it done. That's what we all want in the end. Then what I'm working on today with Julie, who I'll introduce in a minute, and in our world, we'll be achieving unity through the power of encouraging, inspiring, and including others. Encouragement can be the strongest power known around the world. And that power is in the center of empowerment. We can empower each other in teamwork that we accomplish our goals. United by achieving unity, we will become successful, inspiring one another to achieve every goal. And together, we will overcome any challenge and celebrate every victory. Talking back about to my parents and my coaching, from relationship issues to parenting time, sometimes they call it visitation, but there's no parent that's a visitor in their own child's life. But it's for divorced or divorcing parents. I demonstrate how to transform frustration. You probably heard the saying, what the frustration? Into understanding as we quickly realize that anger holds no value. Anger is nothing more than actions not gaining effective results. From personal relationships to prenuptial agreements, and the nuptial is not even required because a lot of us aren't getting married anymore. But we can learn to be reality focused. Life does happen, and we can embrace and enjoy every moment of it. My relationship course workbook also includes and promotes personal agreement discussions and employment agreement reviews so that everyone can commit to achieve what they're in the relationship to do. Here are my two, what they're called, not barcodes. But you go to these with your phone, scan them, and bring up my website home on the left and my contact page on the right. So contact us anytime. We do want to get a chance to talk with you. Okay, we do have again, this is on a weekly basis. Right now, next week's guest is no longer pending. She was gonna be here today. Mary Beth was gonna be here today, but came up with a little bit of a medical problem. And we have a wonderful guest that came in to stand in for her today. But Mary Beth will be here next week, and we'll be talking about the International Non-Violent Day, which is October 2nd. Uh, so we'll be meeting on October 3rd. Then Dr. David Clark will be in the next week talking about mental illness. After that, we'll talk about National Domestic Violence Awareness, Hispanic awareness, LGBT history. All these, we have guest speakers coming. They haven't all committed yet. On Veterans Day, well, 11/7 before Veterans Day, Maury Zelkovich will come talk to us about COPD and how it impacts our veterans. Talk about the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. It's terrible around the world. We'll see what we can do to help stop that violence. And then we talk about moms a lot. What about dad? How about a national play day with dad? A lot of divorced dads don't know what to do in a divorce situation because of our past cultures. Let's help fathers. Let's help mothers. Let's help parents be able to work together in raising our children better. As I mentioned, Thanksgiving, there will not be a podcast on that day, but there will be a recorded video for you to come watch. Love to have you here. Now for the exciting news. And I just talked to Julie this morning, and I am impressed by the book that she's about to turn out. It is awesome. I've seen the outline, which we'll go through it in just a second, but it is just a tremendous book and something that we all need to read as soon as possible. So let me unshare my screen. Or did I not remember to share my screen to begin with? Were you guys watching my slides as they went across, or are you just watching me?
I was watching you, but I didn't know if you had it on a separate.
I did, and I forgot to put it up. That's okay. We're not going to go back. I will go ahead and get this off of my screen here. I forgot to share my screen in the beginning. My apologies. Let me go ahead and get the screen share off. Get back to it. But welcome to today's podcast. We are thrilled to celebrate the upcoming release of Julie Jamison's book, Dumb Goals, Your Leadership Blueprint for Mastering the Art of Turning Vision into Extraordinary Action. Launching this coming Saturday, September 28, 2024, Julie's journey, which we're going to talk about today, is truly inspiring. From her military career to corporate leadership, and now as a renowned fine art photographer, specializing in unique one-of-one pieces, which we'll talk about more of in a second, her story is one of transformation and achievement. In this podcast episode, we'll dive into Julie's dumb goals framework. We'll go into that dumb, D-U-M-B, and what that means, and discuss how it can help anyone turn visionary thinking into extraordinary action. We'll also explore the idea that the true success isn't measured by monetary value, but by the legacy you create through your unique contribution, whether in business, art, or life. Please help me in welcoming Julie Jamison.
Thank you so much, Mark, for having me today. I am very excited to be joining you and your audience. Yes, I am very excited. Dumb Goals is coming out this weekend, and it's all about really setting goals like your 5-year-old self. At the end of the day, it's pretty simplistic because we have all those barriers, and it sounds like you all have discussed this before, of really setting the right example for our children. So in
I think,
short, oh, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, I like the way you said that 5-year-old we are at the end of the day. And sometimes I've never thought about that before.
Mhm.
But since you mentioned, it does seem like that. At the end of the day, we're beat a lot of times.
We are. And I think that it's really important to take yourself back to your actual 5-year-old self. That's one of the visualizations that I went through, really growing the company in the last year itself, and taking myself back to my creative and allowing yourself to be creative, which, because we always let the world get in the way at the end of the
Do.
day.
I like that, what you're saying, to let ourselves be creative. But I know I'm more of a excuse me, a military family, and we weren't as creative. My dad was in the war and in the army. My mother was a bit more strict. Didn't get to be as creative as I wanted to. Didn't even know if I had any creative powers, any creative ability until I got older. And I think if we can keep that creative thought process into our daily lives, I think we can maybe take that a little bit further, right?
Absolutely. And embracing that creative side, I was that 5-year-old child that there are a lot of children that maybe you have one of them for the listener that has 10,000 ideas and they want to do all of them. And that was me as a kid. And my poor parents, because one day I wanted to be a farmer, the next day a veterinarian, and but it was exciting. So think about how exciting it was because you were learning about whatever it was that you wanted to learn more about. In today's day and age, we have the internet. So our kids can learn everything from how to tie their shoes, a bow tie, to how to start an entire business all online,
It
which is
is. It,
mind-boggling.
it is. And we think about today, Julie, or I do, what if? Well, if I would have had this back then, or if I would have had that back then, but how are we able to best manage some of the great things that we have today so that our children are learning from it and not being overwhelmed by all
Right.
of this information, social media, what's right, what's not, what's valid, what's invalid. How do we do that?
In my opinion, and I talk about this more in the book, about surrounding yourself with those that you would be proud to, protect, defend to, the end type of thing. And although I chose to go in the military myself, I didn't come from a large military family, Italian Catholic, more strict. I think the structure that I had as a child, because it probably kept me a little more focused. But I know, Mark, you and I talked about this earlier today, is that it's not necessarily the fault of our parents or our grandparents and so on. It's whatever they were taught. And then, but now I really believe there is a huge awakening in multiple generations trying to break it of, well, why am I thinking this? Because of the technology piece, we're getting information so fast. How do you differentiate? For me, I have really dove into trusting my instincts. On the corporate side, I was a quality manager. We had things changing all the time, and I loved it. I loved the constant new activity, the new problem to solve. However, when you're constantly going, and then believing, trusting those around you, you want to trust those who you surround yourself with. But I remember one of my larger mistakes, of which I owned up to. It's what I was always taught of, hey, I screwed this up. This is how we can prevent it for next time. And here's what I learned so that others don't make the same mistake I did, right? Because we're human.
Sure.
But I went against my instincts on one of my larger mistakes. And
Wow.
yeah, and it was because I was taking advice from individuals with years of experience in that industry when my gut was telling me to go a different direction. Because a lot of times when you're in a leadership role, you have to have that eagle eye view, that 30,000 foot view. We always use that in the military, the 30,000 foot view
Yes.
versus in the weeds, right? You need to notice certain specific details, but if you can have that perspective versus perception
Oh, I
and
like the way you say that.
trust it, you got to trust yourself, because anytime I have gone against my gut, it has bit me.
I can only imagine. Well, let's go into today's topic, Julie. When you're right
Yeah.
on track, let's go. You were serving the military to becoming a corporate leader, finally transitioning into the world of luxury, fine art, photography. Introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us about that, if you would.
So I grew up in Northeast Ohio, in a big automotive family, manufacturing, and absolutely humble beginnings as far as the mentality behind hard work, which I fully agree with. Taking your time and just allowing yourself to really throw 110% into anything you pursue. And that was who I was surrounded with. So I grew up and went to college for aviation, went into the Air Force as a military officer, and
Thank you again for your service.
thank you so much. And proudly served as a nuclear missile operator. Definitely a scary role, but when you're young, you don't even realize because your frontal lobe isn't finished the amount of power you have. And I was so proud of that mission. It was hard for sure in certain situations. It's like learning an entire new language, but there's a reason it's out of the news. It needs to stay out of the news. We never want to need to use them, and deterrence is key in that. I had my all 4 children on active duty, nearly 11, all the way down to 2. Yes, I have 4 children. Never originally planned to have that many, but I would not change it for the world. And going in the Air Force, we are adamant on recruit the individual, retain the family, which is key, regardless of what your family looks like.
That is key.
It's the retainability and taking care of people, and a lot of people from other branches end up switching to it. But went into multiple leadership roles back to back and concluded my active duty time in the academia side, teaching leadership, team building, giving and receiving feedback with Air Force ROTC, and to give back as an instructor in that way was so important. It was probably one of my most rewarding roles. And I know you teach as well, so you understand how important and how much we learn when we're teaching.
Yes.
Key. So transition from that, right after I had my 4th child, I did my interview for corporate 2 weeks after having an emergency C-section with my youngest. Of course, the youngest had to be the hurricane rolling in.
Yeah.
The youngest always seems to be that way. But did my interview. It went amazing. And I had interviewed multiple places as I was stepping away from active duty. They give you time to go do interviews and things like that. And great transition assistance program. It's called TAP to help.
Well, can I touch on that a second? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but that's one of the things. And I do have a military family, and I have a colonel from the Air Force, and I have a nephew that's as high up as he can go without being an officer. But what's that like? Is it beneficial, do you believe, to have that education and knowledge and going through that military experience also? Doesn't that kind of help a little bit in your corporate world now, going through that military?
So it's called TAP. It's called the Transition Assistance Program, and it's now federally mandated for individuals leaving any branch of the service. We had Marines in the class, and ours was all virtual because it was still 2022. We were not traveling as much for in-person events. And they would break it down to writing your resume, practicing interview skills, because transitioning out, especially if you've been, in my opinion, in probably longer than the 4-year mark, even 6 years, it's ingrained in you. It's ingrained to put a uniform on. And the thing I severely underestimated was physically not putting that uniform on every day. And I talk about it a ton in the book of, I felt like it actually took me 2 full years, which was this past summer, coming out of active duty, to get my style down, because I went to Catholic school too. I wore a uniform a long time. A long time. And so clearly I like uniforms. So the Zuckerberg and black collar approach of just wear a black turtleneck, I love it. Absolutely. So you're not wasting your time thinking. So I had to really realize, because to me, I talk about it a little bit more, but it's like, it was my suit of armor. And for me to admit, like, something's off, like I don't have my swagger, there's something off when I'm walking. And that's a huge thing that veterans don't tell you when you're leaving and leaving the active duty side. And I still am in the reserve today in a new career field. So that was a whole other transition coming out. But if it were not corporate America, a lot of people don't realize the military is just corporate America. We usually do it first. And because any new programs that are like the SMART goals, all of those were probably tested in the military first, because you have mass numbers that have mandatory training. And what is a great event to go to and get a massive amount of people? The military.
Yes.
So it's a great testing bed for new programs to see if it works, because we're going to implement it and we're going to see it through to the end and then do a full debrief on it. So tap was very helpful, but there was something that I was not told was just physically not putting the uniform on every day. So I had to find my identity, like you mentioned, going to corporate and then transitioning to the art. People didn't realize, because people were like, how did you go from A to Z?
I was about
And
to ask that because transition to corporate leadership, the challenge of adapting to the business world, lessons learned from leading teams in high pressure environments, and now you're in an artistic, what you call it,
yes,
evolution?
it really is an evolution. It's leaning into that creativity side, which is why I even mentioned that the book, The Dumb Goals, is a blueprint, because you have to be your own artist. You have to be your own CEO of your life and creating it yourself. So I actually created art ever since I was a young kid. I was constantly sketching, designing buildings, designing gowns, you name it. I was designing it in some way, and designing dream layouts. Like when I go into a home, I remember when we went to build our house coming back to Ohio. Oh my gosh. I was dreaming about layouts, of common sense layouts, what
Really?
would make the most sense, like kids coming in and mud and all that, because kids always bring mud. They always have crumbs on them somehow. But anywho, I remember designing all those. My mom was a wedding photographer, and her dad was really big into electronics as they were coming out. And my grandparents were, World War II, Depression era children. So very, when we say humble, I mean, you bring it with you and you pass it on to your kids. Like we were mentioning, we
Right.
have to break those, anything now of whether it's lack.
Right. Culture.
Yes, yes, it's key. So transition, fast forward into my military career. The minute I decided to go full-time artist, leaving corporate, the reason I left was really because I didn't see my kids. And my youngest, being so young, he was in the first year of his life, had turned one. I'm like, you know what? I'm not missing this. There's so many moms starting their own businesses because of that, and parents in general, because you want to be able to see and be present with your children. So it was my job to set the example to them of, you can pursue it and monetize your gifts, because you are here for a purpose. Everybody is important to be here. And that's
Let me
where,
touch on that. And I don't know if you go into the book or not on this part, but you say everyone has a purpose. Don't we create our own purpose?
we
I mean, we
do.
have a purpose, but it's self-created of what we want to do. As I tell people all the time, life is what you make it. So let's make it awesome. And
Mhm.
that builds upon that foundation to expand our purpose, right?
It really does. Because you may feel that you were put here to be an engineer, but like we were talking about earlier today, is that you have choices. In my opinion, there is no wrong path. You learned from that experience. I was excited to go to corporate. I needed to live it, right? And I had an amazing team. But had I not had that on top of my military background, because I allowed myself, when I was early in manufacturing, well, you're new to manufacturing. And there were individuals that kept
Right.
saying that, until one day it clicked in my head, I'm not new to manufacturing. I've manufactured bombs on target if required, people, and so on in the military. But it
Right.
was that mental shift of, no, I've manufactured plenty of things. Even if you're manufacturing a child from birth to 18 and you're a stay-at-home parent, you're manufacturing something. And
You may
it's,
not have manufactured on the same machines theoretically that they're using there on that current job, but as you're saying, you've been manufacturing, you've been creating and building your whole life, right?
right, right. And we all do. And that's the only difference between an artist and a non-artist, is somebody that makes art. That's it,
There you go.
right?
Yep,
You can
yep.
put a pencil across a piece of paper and say, this is the line of my life, and this is what it, and have a whole story behind it. That's
And
art.
this is what it means to me.
Yeah,
And yeah,
yeah.
every curve. Well, let's touch on that a little bit because the decision to focus one of one. Now, I don't know what the difference is. I hope you can explain that.
Yeah.
One of one fine art photography and how that choice reflects the value of unique, exclusive creation in
Mhm.
some of today's world. Can you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, so my tagline is exclusively one-on-one fine art photography, because there's only one of you. and we're all individual. You could grow up in the same home and have completely same, like different, same dinners. You went to this maybe church on Sunday, but my sister and I talk about our childhood very differently. So the reason when I say one of one is like, this is the one that started my company right above me. It's beautiful pink and white roses. And this is what started it. When I created, I'm like, well, initially I did what a lot of people want to do is you want to help masses of people. Art does not solve a lot of problems for certain people, but to me, this is my peace. This is my fun. So it's solving a problem in my life of just be creative, just create, right? Like think of the Sistine Chapel. Did we need all
Wow.
the painting? I don't know.
Uh,
I can't imagine not having it now.
mhm.
So when you are creating that exclusive, your purpose, you are the artist of it. So for my clients, I want them to have that one of a kind experience. I only release 28 photographs on the 28th of each month, which is also happening on Saturday as well. My VIP
Yes.
clients I allow 48 hours in early.
Mhm.
And what's entertaining with it though is that the true collectors that see, I don't have to share it with anybody.
Mhm.
It's mine. It's like it's your 5-year-old self of I don't want to share type of thing.
Your 5-year-old self. There you
It
go.
is. It really goes
Yeah,
back to that, the root.
it does. Yeah. Well, while you're on that subject, now you create, what is it, 369 unique photographs
Mhm.
each year, each one a singular masterpiece,
Yeah.
never to be replicated.
Right. Yeah. So I do the 28 each month in my regular galleries. Gate 28 and J Rose Scrolls galleries are my two galleries. J Rose Scrolls is like what you see above, a floral
Mhm.
that is floral photography, mixing mediums with AI, making it look like watercolors and oil paintings. And then all of my landscape and architecture styles are in Gate 28. And the 28 comes from releasing 28 on the 28th of the month. But between the two, I do a rotating schedule, 6 releases in each gallery a year. And J Rose Scrolls is coming out tonight for my VIPs Saturday, which is why we also release the book on Saturday as well. But the other two galleries are for my buyers to recognize them in November on Veterans Day, along with an end of year auction for those investors that like to have that one of a kind. And those are labeled slightly different, creating demand within the one-on-one. So a lot of times with a photographer, you'd have an edition or a limited edition. Maybe it's one of 50, one of 100. And I kind of started there and I realized this is not what I want to do. I want to sell it to one person. I want them to have that exclusive experience because we're all worth it.
Wow. Yeah. It's amazing the emotional or artistic value of owning that one and only one.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that's
in today's
beautiful.
digital world, I know I'm one of very few that do it, especially with photography. And there I may take hundreds of thousands of photos in a year, but
You
it challenges
must.
me to be my best and to give you
Wow.
the client my best because I take way too many pictures.
That is wonderful.
Yes.
I laugh because I take a few and my better half takes a few. We have to go through deleting pictures at times.
Right.
So, okay, what it means to own something, just kind of touching more on what you're saying, truly exclusive, how that experience, you touched on this a little bit, but how this experience transcends monetary value. It is about legacy, storytelling, and one personal connection to the piece. Where'd that come from?
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Well, so I have, like I mentioned, I have 4 children and they all have completely different tastes. They've taught me so much in my leadership and in my business. But what's entertaining is what I like is not necessarily going to be what my oldest daughter likes. She's getting to that age where she wants to buy everything herself. So I want you to have that individualized experience when you're buying a piece. You're the only one with it. And being the only one, like just like there's nobody like you. You may have similar personalities or tendencies, but we each have our own story. So like this one was experimenting. completely. And leaving my family legacy behind. I've already told my older two children, I'm like, this is the one that myself and my husband and the business owns. This is not going anywhere. This is,
Wow.
if you don't remember mom by anything else, this is what started the
Here it
company,
is.
type of thing. So I'm making items that can also be auctioned if they want to, you know, for investment pieces, but also that piece like that Thomas Kincaid that is passed down from generation to generation. I'm putting it on some of the best materials available in today's printing world of archival, acid-free, ready, as I like to say, ready to hang in the Louvre, put a gold frame on it so it matches, type of thing. And that's what I want you to feel when you're buying it.
That is beautiful. I cannot imagine the value of what that would be for actually so few people. I mean, 369, I believe I saw.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's kind
That's
of the
amazing.
Tesla rule if anybody's into Tesla. So that's one of the frequencies of, I think, being and
Oh, okay. Thank you.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just touching how those things mean. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Well, that part's beautiful, but there's one more thing about what you do that intrigues me because you're giving 10% of all of your net profits to the Boys and Girls Club of America.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
awesome.
It's
Why do
Tony
you do that?
Robbins is actually who inspired me to do that earlier in January. I was really trying to figure out what in the business, like, why did I not feel as attached that it was part of me, you know, where I was proud to go in a room and say I'm the founder and CEO of my galleries, right? The disconnect he offers usually in the beginning of the year, you know, one of the free online events. And I was like, you know what, let's just attend. It was January timeframe. It's always a good time to set intentions for your year. And I go, and he emphasized moving forward with one step, which we'll discuss when we talk more about the book, but service. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's right in front of me. My whole career has been about service,
Mhm.
all of it. It has always been about, you know, defending the Constitution, the
Yes.
Americans, you know, like that has been what my entire adult life has been about. And my grandparents always talked about putting others first. I had some of the most generous grandparents known to man, and my parents too. They would give you anything, and they truly valued education and self improvement. Regardless of it, like, don't worry about the test as much. Are you actually growing as a person? And that is where the giving back to our children is key because there are a lot of programs that have been removed from schools.
I
And
have.
the kids that would really, like, if it weren't for my mentors in life, want our children to have that, regardless of where you're from. Because, like you said, you create your purpose in life, and every child from any situation deserves to either get out, grow, and build upon it.
Yes. That is exactly right. All right. Now you mentioned the book. That's
Yes,
what we're going to yet. Internex and defining success and those dumb D-U-M-B, which we'll go into what those mean in a second. I'm gonna have them here on my screen, but
yes,
that you bring those up about the dumb D-U-M-B goals framework.
yes, yes.
Let
So
us know about that.
the dumb goals framework came from, I had just left corporate. And by the way, I had not admitted until about 10 months in that I was at burnout because I'm a bit stubborn to my husband. And I told him, I'm like, I may have been at a little bit of burnout leaving corporate. And he's like, really? Were you? And I said, just a little. Okay. So when I left corporate, officially, I'd done some interviews with other companies. And that's another reason when I stepped foot into these interviews, I'm like, something's just not connecting. If I'm going to build in companies, I need to build myself too and build that family legacy, like we talked about. So, the title of the book, before I had an outline, I had the title over a year ago. And it's because I have been looked at sideways when I say, I'm going to go do this, and then I go do it. And people are like, oh, you did that type of thing of, wait, you went to school for aviation and you got a private pilot's license? I'm like, yeah. Like, and I like to use the Elle Woods term. Like, what? Like, it's hard for Legally Blonde. Because when you're setting delusional goals, which is what P stands for, you're going to be looked at like you have a third eyeball in most cases. And that's
Yeah.
okay.
And to go over the full title of your book, it's The Blueprint of Success and One-on-One Fine Art Photography. There's a lot to it in what you're doing and what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. So the delusional piece is you're setting these goals like your 5-year-old self. And because remember when you were little, and not everybody had the same situation, of course, but if you said you wanted to be a dinosaur, okay, go dress up like a dinosaur. If you wanted to be an astronaut, awesome, go be an astronaut. But as adults, what happens? Reality sets in, and people say, ooh, that's kind of big. Oh, you have kids. This is not the right time to start a business. Why should you start a business? But a lot of times we're so worried about what other people are thinking instead of creating our own purpose in life that we don't let our own voice speak at the end of the day. So make ridiculous goals. Like, for example, this book, from deciding to officially say, you know what, I'm going to release it on the official legal anniversary of my company, has been about 6 weeks to officially break my outline down that I had done months ago,
Wow.
but forcing myself, no, it's time. I wasn't ready when I first came up with the title of the book, but I'm going to shrink that timeline. And then my editor and publisher said, sure, let's do it. So, and I said, so she jumped on the delusional train with me, and we got this book created to help people. Even if it helps one person, to me, it's worth it.
Ex- Exactly. If it helps one person move forward, that is
Exactly.
great.
Yeah.
All right. So the D is delusional level goal.
Correct.
Embrace goals that seem impossible or crazy to others, but inspire passion and drive to you.
Yep. Yeah. So
What?
really letting yourself, so maybe you want, let's say an athlete, you want
Okay.
to take your um, hits like baseball. You want to take your hits, let's just say it's 100 and you want to take it to 500, you want to take it to 1,000. Take your whatever your goal is, and because in SMART we talk about realistic and attainable, which is great at a certain point. But when you're trying to step outside, because your only limitation and your only glass ceiling is right here.
Right.
There are no glass ceilings.
Thank you.
You get to create your reality, and everything happens for a reason. So if you failed, you were supposed to learn something from it.
And that's kind of where I heard from you when you said the word or the term perception earlier. You can
Yes.
perceive a glass ceiling,
Mhm.
but it's
Yeah.
all, like you said, up here.
It is. It's all up there. Women do it, in my experience, and I think we can do it in multiple ways. It doesn't mean that that's not realistically like happening right in front of you and it's unfolding, but your control is how you react. And, growing up in a house with an Italian Catholic mom who I love dearly, we like as a kid, you think your parents are yelling at you all the time. But now as a parent, I realize, oh, I didn't listen the first 2 times. Right. So
It's so true.
taking that step back, that 30,000 foot view, the eagle eye view, and actually looking at it, because I've had conversations about it with my in-laws and my parents, and I'm like, okay, I get it now. Right. Until you experience it from the other side. That's why, for example, in leadership, I had an individual in corporate, nicest guy, and we again manufacturing, and the shop floor had gotten a sweep of pay raises, which is amazing, right? But we
Okay.
were in back shop support and quality, at least his role. And we were working on ways to pursue promotions and pay increases, because to me, the best thing to do as a leader is to help the others around you succeed. And not just around you at the peer level, your team, right? When they can promote and do better, even if that means they move on to another position within the company or to another
Oh,
company, but
sure.
it's worth it. It feels good, right?
Mhm.
I remember having the conversation, and we dive deep, and you've probably heard of doing the 5 why exercise.
Oh, yeah. Five whys. Mhm.
It's so important. So I mention and break that down in the book a little bit more when we go through exercises. he wanted to be in a leadership role. And so I'm sitting there because we did one-on-ones at least once a month, if not every 3 to 4 weeks. And I said, okay, well, why? And you could see the frustration. But then by the fifth why, we got to the root
Exactly.
of, at first it was make more money, because he had actually taken a pay cut once the overtime, because he was now in a salary role. Or no, it wasn't a salary, but he basically wasn't getting the same amount of overtime required to make what he was making on the shop floor. And I said, okay, well, I make less per hour than I did before I was in bigger leadership roles. So move up. What's the next why? Why do you want, more money? And then it's the stability. And then we finally get down, because he'd been in the company for a while, to take it because I'm not seeing what I like, and I want to help people get to where they need to be to go fix it. And I said, great, there's your why. So you need to do that with yourself, is keep asking why until you actually get to the root, even if it's reacting. Why do I feel so stressed and anxious about something? Because we talk about our children, we pass our anxieties on to our children. Like, I am out doing landscape photography, and I would constantly say, I'm afraid of heights, I'm afraid of heights, I'm afraid of heights. That's my mom. I took that on as a young kid. And then I wouldn't, why would I stand near a cliff, right? Now, the common sense is if it's eroding, you're going to fall, right? It took me about 3 months of continuously, at least 5 days a week, going out, regardless of weather, to hike, to ensure to myself I was safe. Nobody was attacking me. I watched too many Law and Order episodes. I think that was half the issue. But you do, like, you get, like, somebody's gonna pop out from a bush and kill you. That I had to get past that. It took me about 3 months of being outside consistently to get past that and move on. And here I am realizing I'm not actually that afraid of heights. I took that and passed that on to me. So now what do I say? I'm not fond of them, but I'm going anyways. It's where are you looking? Are you looking in front of you at the path? Or are you looking down at the abyss below you?
I talk to people about that quite a bit, that term fear, false evidence about reality. And their fears are self-created, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We do that to ourselves all the time.
That's good. I like that you brought up the 5 whys. We don't see that very often. In the PowerPoint that I wasn't showing earlier, I did mention the agile and the lean,
Yes.
eliminated waste. I do the Lean Six Sigma as well. Build the ITL, Information Technology Infrastructure Library. Build on all those terms. I had those, but I talked to very few people outside of my circle, theoretically, that thinks about those or knows about those. I'm impressed that you brought those up, even for our personal life.
It is. You really want to do it in your life. And I have my project management certification, and I actually started
PMP.
applying it. I got it before I took the test, 8 months pregnant, didn't know I had COVID.
Wow.
And somehow passed it. I was so nervous because I'm not a good test taker. So, but the theory behind is so important. And the book actually walks through, I take you through a lot of questions, and then there's a QR code for the
QR
workbook.
code. That's that word I couldn't think of earlier. Thank you.
I was like, I think you started QR code. Yes. So QR code, and it takes you to a workbook that you can download and start writing things out, because we get overwhelmed and talk ourselves out of it, or tell someone our idea too soon before we could let it sink in. So early on, when I first started, I think I mentioned, like, earlier today, my husband said he had chest pains for about 3 weeks, because I went from, let's make a really nice paycheck in corporate, to not making a penny and fully investing, right? So that's a big, it's a family discussion that needs to happen. And what was entertaining was, once we finally got to that point, our marriage went through a rough patch, and it was important that we had it. We needed it. So my project management brain went into, to me, there is nothing that you can't accomplish if you outline it. And I take you through a whole exercise of actually outlining your goal and then really getting granular with it. Because like, oh, well, that's a 5-minute task. I kept putting off creating my LLC because it sounded daunting. And then I'm like, oh, that's all I have to do to get the application. And it was way less invasive than I thought it was. But we build it up in our head that, oh, this is awful. And
Does that take us? Go ahead.
It's not procrastination. It's that we built it up, that it's going to be a daunting task.
Well, I like what you're saying there, Julie, because when you were talking, I thought about your next, what the U stands for in dumb. Your uncomfortable zone.
Mm-hmm.
Growth happens when you step out of your comfort zone and push past limits.
Yes.
Does that relate a little bit right there?
It does. This is the one going back to the hiking. Oh my gosh. Every single day. And then randomly, my husband would call me because I started really leaning into the photography. He's like, what you doing? I finally got to the point where I would joke about it, and I'd be like standing on a cliff that was muddy, sinking into the mud. And I'm like, I'm looking for Bigfoot. You know, like just something ridiculous. Because he's like, well, are you good? Are you safe? But I got so used to them being outside, and I hadn't been in corporate. We sit inside a lot. So I encourage, even if it's 5 minutes, just get outside. I don't care what the weather is. Maybe not a hurricane. There's hurricanes going on down south right now. Don't step in a hurricane, please, for safety reasons.
Yes.
But getting outside in that reality check of like 5 to 10 minutes, the days I don't at least do that, it's like, okay, the first 5 minutes are the hardest in anything. Is okay, just 5 minutes. Before you know it, my entire house is clean. When I lean in, it's like, okay, just 5 minutes, just do dishes, move on. And then I'm doing my typical mom thing of, okay, well, shoes, and it turns into all that. But if you say, okay, just 5 minutes to go, I don't mention that as much in the book, but the uncomfortable zone is, I was not nuts about heights. Okay, 5-minute walk. Before you knew it, 3-4 months in, I was taking the steeper paths. And I'm like, oh, you know what? I didn't die. I'm okay.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm just picturing what I read again on your book. So if I'm jumping ahead or anything, though,
No,
Julie,
you're good.
let me know, because that went back into your moving out. Take action, like I'm hearing you say now. Take action and moving forward, regardless of fear or doubt. The importance of execution. Goals remain dreams unless you each of us take decisive action toward achieving them.
Yep. So it goes back to not only Tony Robbins, but a bunch of other leaders and business owners that I follow on social media. And the one benefit of social media is like the short 31-minute clips from podcasts such as this that really take you to that next level. So regardless of how you're getting the information, if you are surrounding yourself with individuals that, if no one around you currently owns their own business, do you think you should take business advice from them?
No.
Probably not, right? So, but we like to think that we live through others' experiences. It's one thing if you're a parent and you had to experience an emergency with your child. Unfortunately, you lived it too, but you lived it from the parent perspective. So not taking on everyone else's problems as you go forward is key. You got to let that go. You got to I came up with this analogy today because we're getting ready to take our kids up to Banff in Canada, which is going to be gorgeous. Yeah. We're going to be at elevation, and I have a lot of camera gear. So to help train, I've been walking with a 30-pound vest.
Wow.
Yeah. So because roughly a lot of
30 pounds is heavy.
It's pretty heavy. I mean, it's about the size of my toddler as well, because I have tanky children. They're ready for a zombie apocalypse and such. But I had the vest on, and I thought of this as I'm out in nature, that you moving forward is taking the 30-pound vest off. It's letting the baggage go and feel how much lighter you feel. That's getting rid of your traumas and really getting into the move out. Just take a few steps is key. And that is both going And one of the things I say in the book is knowing when to go and knowing when to slow. As a mom with technology all around me and business, as you know, if you've done it for a while, it turns into 7 days a week. So initially I wanted to wear stretchy pants, pick up my kids from school. COVID changed me on the stretchy pants thing, and do something I love. It was that simple. That was my business plan. Do something that I truly, truly love. And I've been able to pick up my kids. I've been able to wear stretchy pants when I'm out hiking, and doing something I love that is taking it to others. But when you move out and you take that one step, it's actually not as hard as you think it is. Starting a podcast like you have recently, that first one probably was a little like, okay, we can do this, right?
Luckily, even like you, I'm pretty lucky. I don't mind being in an audience. I don't mind being up on stage. Had a great friend. Dr. Moore Orman was my first guest, and he's
Perfect.
awesome. I've had friends here. Talking to you has been almost like we've known each other all our lives.
Right.
It's, I think one of those back to your fear on that. Too many times we fear other people for whatever reason. And when we do like what you're talking about with that getting outside that comfort zone, the uncomfortable zone, and realize that a lot of people out there are just like you and me.
Yeah,
We open up a lot of doors, don't we?
we do. We do. It's key. You surround yourself with those that you would either want to be a friend with or become. And when you choose, like, I went to the Forbes Women's Summit, Power Women's Summit a few weeks
Oh,
ago.
wow.
And the
How
more
was
and
that?
more, oh, it was amazing. So many amazing leaders and entrepreneurs. Moira Forbes was hosting, and Steve Forbes was there as well. They're extremely humble people. And the more you tell yourself, successful people are just people that choose to be successful. And I'm a successful person. So you define what your version of success is, if that's wearing stretchy pants, whatever
Is it?
you
Yeah.
want, traveling whenever you want, having time for you. What is your version of success? Being surrounded by those you love, right? Meeting them, they're not at arm's length, right? You want to be respectful, of course, but you also want to, they're human. You're human. They put their pants
Yes.
on. Maybe they jump in both feet. I don't know, but go for it. They put their pants on one leg at a time, just like you. We
We,
are all
we
human.
all do. Yes.
Yes.
Well, then, and I hate to interrupt you, but we only have about 7 minutes
I
left, and
know.
I want to turn into your blocks.
Yes.
Identifying and overcoming the blocks, both internal and external, that stands in the way of your success. Practical advice for listeners on how to navigate and remove the blocks holding them back from pursuing their DUMB goals. Touch on that if you don't mind.
So I don't mention this one in the book, but I like to give the example. Steve Harvey is the one that actually got me big on vision boards. And I'm sure you have
I
watched a
love
lot of,
Steve Harvey.
I love Steve Harvey so much. And maybe it's the Ohio thing too. But of course, he's down to earth as well. And he gives the
Yes.
example when he's giving advice that his mom he wanted to get this new car. And he had a rust bucket that was just dead in the yard type of thing on the street or wherever the parking spot was. And his mom kept saying, you need to get rid of that one first. Because she was trying to teach him, you can't get the new car if you don't make space for it. So when you're setting that goal, if you are in the mindset of, for example, I had a different title. If you're in the mindset that I am not a business CEO, I can't go talk to a CEO, that's too much. There was a shift that I did earlier this year, and I went from owner and like creative lead of the galleries, and I changed my title. It took me so long to come up with that first title when I started the business because I'm like, I felt like I was impersonating I haven't done this. But I gave myself founder, CEO, fine art photographer. I changed it in less than 5 minutes. And I was like, no, I am. And I keep telling myself I am. So if you're the CEO of your life, what does the CEO of your life do? And then you act like it. So you have to remove the block. And you want to know what it was? I thought everybody from my, military career that was following me on LinkedIn was going to say all these things. Where were all those sayings? They were up here. I had to get rid of them, get them out of the brain. That, oh, she went from middle management all the way to CEO. Like, who the heck does she think she is? Do you think they actually have the time to give to, you know? No, they don't. They're living their own lives. So just
They
be
don't.
you.
Yeah. Just be you. Yeah.
Yeah.
You got that time. You gotta do what you gotta do. So, and touching that one, what does success really mean? And again, I'm going through the things in your book, and let me get your website out here. But success is not just measured by money, but by the impact you make, the people you help, and the legacy you leave. Julie's definition of success: creating something lasting, whether through leadership, art, or service to the community.
Yes.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So my personal core values are people, service, and lead with integrity in all my decision making. And the people expands first with my family. I want to impact my children as a mom. It's my job to make sure my 4 children are not menaces to society and slash parent, so that's my job, is to get you to 18 alive with all your, appendages, hopefully, because I have 2 girls, 2 boys, and leave the legacy of building your family empire. And we started doing that in my family earlier this year. We took 4 kids to Paris, and my son is actually very into architecture. So it's funny how things pass to your children. So he started drawing all these buildings, and I said, well, there's 4 of you. Somebody can paint the ceilings. Somebody can be the architect, the interior designer. And my kids, when I go talk to them and I have an idea, sometimes I go to them first. You know what they do? They just keep, oh, we could do this and we could do this and we could do this. Surround yourself with the people that build upon your idea. So when you're building that legacy, what do you want your obituary to read? Do you want it to have a
What's
number?
your legacy?
Or do you want to have a famous saying in your family? What is your legacy at the end of the day? And it's so key to have.
And that may be it. We only have a couple of minutes left. That's where I want to go to next. First, Julie, thank you so much for being on my podcast today. This has been awesome. I think you're going to open up a lot of eyes to help people grow to that next step. I did just put your website, the juliejamison.com into the chat. I'll put your Facebook into the chat. But in the next minute or two, do you have a closing statement that you would like to share with us about yourself, your book? What can you tell us?
Yes. Go set goals 10, 20, 30 times bigger than you can possibly imagine. Anything from starting your own business, reaching a sports goal, whatever it is. Maybe it's getting A's, maybe it's being a better parent, being more patient. Set that goal, and then I want you to multiply it by 10, 20, or 30. And the book is going to walk you through all of that on how to easily do it and be more patient. Find where your flags are and remove those flags, because your life is going to be a lot happier when you think of what you are going to be remembered by versus thinking about the number behind your name.
Like you mentioned a few minutes ago, do they care? No,
Yes.
that doesn't matter. Well, just in closing then, how do we get your book?
So the book is going to be on both Amazon and Barnes & Noble for pre-orders on the 28th. And all you have to type in is dumb goals, and we will get you all that. And of course, the QR code with the workbook. In the book, it tells you when to open your workbook and dive in even deeper so that you can, the goal is to get you to believe in yourself and get you out pursuing and taking action on your goals.
Julie, thank you so much. This is awesome. I will be sending this out. I'll send you a recording also. Be on my site. We'll get this out to as many people as possible. Thank you so much for your time today. It has been an honor talking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Mark. It means a lot. Thank you.
Everybody have a good day. Hope to see you next week.
Yes.
Bye-bye. Cheers.